Please salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, and good evening. Could the superintendent please call the roll?
Ms. Chisholm.
Yes.
Ms. Cormier.
Here.
Mr. Lipset. Here. Mr. Kissel.
Here.
Mr. Mulrennan.
Present.
Dr. Wells.
Here.
Ms. Crowley.
Present. Okay, we're all here and accounted for. Moving on to approval of minutes, I have 8/17/21. Is there any action?
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Aye. The motion passes 7-0. And next we have public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to come before the school committee? I see Mrs. Keating. Feel free to state your name and perhaps which school you're affiliated with if you don't feel like giving your address.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Crystal Muse Keating, and I'm a resident here in Woburn. I have two children. One attends Woburn Memorial High School, and I have an autistic son that attends an out-of-district placement at North Shore Academy in Beverly, Massachusetts. Many people do not know this, but it takes a lot for your child to be placed out of district. Evidence needs to be built up before there's a change of thought from the district that they can't educate your child. Meanwhile, trauma is setting in for the child. In our case, the documented trauma started in 2017. So after 4 years, Woburn Public Schools agreed in this past May, that he needed a different placement because Woburn Public Schools could no longer educate him. Within the building of North Shore Academy, his new school, our son is thriving. He loves his new school. He had an amazing summer there, with one exception. You would think that once your child is out of district, all the trauma would stop. Enter NRT Bus Company. Ask any special needs parent in Woburn, and the first words out of their mouth is, "What a horrible company." Yet Woburn Public Schools continues to sign contracts with them. We had serious issues with them back in preschool, and we had hopes that things were different now. No. NRT has continued to do things that continues to traumatize our neediest population, including our son. We had issues with NRT transporting our son within Woburn before he was even moved to North Shore in Beverly. Masks not being worn, a driver trying to drop him off at the closed Wyman school, drivers not putting their lights on and letting cars pass the van while our son was crossing to get on the van taking 45 minutes to essentially get from Central Square, the Kennedy, to Central Square by the Hurled Wyman. 45 minutes in Woburn. We had problem after problem the first half of the summer with NRT. There were times where he was on the bus for over an hour, which is illegal in Massachusetts for a special needs student. And I was told by the special education office that they are working on it, just for him to be on the bus the next day for over an hour again. Yesterday, our son, on his first day of school, never had his van show up at our home or in his school, despite being told on August 20th that he had a route, a van, and a driver, and they would be there at 7:15. When I called, they said the van would be there in 5 to 10 minutes. After 40 minutes, my husband decided to drive him to Beverly to not cause further trauma and anxiety of being late on the first day of school. I will provide you with a timeline of horrible events that happened yesterday and today after I speak, including NRT leaving our son yesterday at North Shore Academy and not picking him up after confirming with Woburn Public School staff, making my husband leave work again and get him an hour and 15 minutes after dismissal. Today, after NRT confirmed that our son would be picked up according to the schedule, the van was at the wrong address and didn't come to pick my son up until 7:39, 24 minutes late. I requested Maureen Ryan to speak with me about my concerns, and she deferred me back to Renee Morgan, who as a team chair could not answer my questions due to not being privy to the information I was asking. As of right now, I have not heard anything from Woburn Public School Administration. What makes me irate is that we've been told over and over again that if we drive our son, we will be reimbursed mileage for him, something like 50 cents a mile. My husband and I both have jobs. I'm an educator. I'm already back in school with children in front of me. We didn't choose for our son to be failed by Woburn Public Schools and have to attend an out-of-district placement. My husband had to leave his job twice yesterday for a total of 2 hours to drive our son. I had to field emails, texts, and phone calls while teaching my own classroom full of students. Are you going to reimburse us for our time out of our jobs to do the job of the company you have a contract with, which in turn defies the legal IEP document that states he will be provided transportation to and from school? I am here tonight to urge you to put special education transportation on your next school committee agenda. Get NRT in here to explain themselves while they are not holding up their contract. Be transparent with the public of where our taxpayer dollars are going. Survey and listen to parents when we tell you NRT is not doing their job. I'm not the only one having issues with NRT. NRT yesterday said on the news that they are short drivers and new drivers won't be ready until the end of September. When I told a Woburn Public School staff member that I would be speaking tonight, they said, good, school committee needs to listen and take care of this problem. Dr. Crowley and school committee members, are you going to tell my superintendent, who saw me crying in my classroom yesterday and asked how he could help, why I can't be at work for 2 hours a day because the company you hired can't transport my son without causing anxiety? Would you like to call the parents of my students to explain? Are you going to sit with my son every night and reassure him that the van will get him safely to school and on time? You need to figure this problem out. Our son's school noted that our son is doing well because he's at North Shore Academy. But transportation is the biggest hurdle because it sets the tone of how his school day will go. Every minute my son is late for school or is in distress over transportation on your watch through NRT is not a free and appropriate public education. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keating. Is anyone else in the audience like to address the school committee? Sure, come on up. Just state your name and maybe what school you're affiliated with.
Thank you. I'm Allison Van Deventer, and I'm the parent of an incoming first grader at the Malcolm White, and I'm here to talk about classroom ventilation and air cleaning strategies. So the Delta variant is more than twice as transmissible as the original virus, and it's airborne. And because the virus is inhaled, classrooms need a continuous supply of fresh or freshly cleaned air. And so one way to assess whether they're getting this supply is to measure the air changes per hour, or the ACH. And the experts agree that in the face of Delta, classrooms should have 5 to 6 air changes per hour. DESE, even before Delta appeared, recommended 4 to 6 ACH. So I've been trying to find these measurements for Woburn classrooms. I was told by Mr. Alcanada the other day that Malcolm White is getting 2.3 air changes per hour. So this would put the school in the low category here in Harvard's healthy building team, below the bare minimum. But so of course that number is just an average, right? So maybe closets and hallways are being factored in. I don't know, but that's the point, right? I don't know. So I would like to ask that we look at the air changes per hour for each classroom in Woburn. And what if some classrooms are low? Well, you've already upgraded the HVAC system, and from what I hear, it sounds great. It sounds as though everything necessary has been done. But these days, aerosol experts generally seem to be agreeing that that's not enough for a return to school. So other strategies are necessary. We can open the windows, and that's a very effective strategy, actually, particularly in the winter. But it would have to be done every day without exception, right? And we all know what winters are like in this area. And some students may have IEPs that specify that the windows have to be kept closed, so that's a concern too. And so the other option available to us is to put portable HEPA air cleaners in each classroom. So portable HEPA air cleaners are effective at reducing virus particles in indoor air, including in classroom air. One recent study by the CDC found that a combination of HEPA air cleaners and universal masking reduced exposure by up to 90%. And there are other studies that I can send along that have found similar things. And in fact, a number of other districts in the area, Somerville, Burlington, Cambridge, Belmont, Brookline, Melrose, Lexington, and Bedford, just to name a few where I have friends, and others around the country, Sunnyvale, Oakland, and one other in the Bay Area, San Diego Unified, are all using portable HEPA air cleaners. And many of these districts are putting them in every classroom because in the face of Delta, we need all the tools we can get to keep our kids in school, right? So of course there are a lot of issues to think through. Is our electrical grid going to be up to it? Cost, of course. There is a do-it-yourself version that is highly effective. It's been tested, and it's made out of a box fan and some filters and duct tape. So that, of course, costs a bit less. It's important to consider this from an equity perspective, though, because if the district doesn't take action, then concerned parents like me are going to show up asking if they can donate air cleaners to their kids' classrooms, and that's not going to be an equitable approach, right? So I'm asking that the school committee publish the air changes per hour for every classroom in every school, and then do what's necessary to bring each classroom up to 5 air changes per hour, which is really what we should be getting with Delta going around. And to me, the threat of Delta is severe enough that it would be worthwhile to put air cleaners in every classroom. But if we need to take a more targeted approach, the least we could do is deploy them strategically to make sure that every classroom is getting up to that 5 air changes per hour. Portable HEPA air cleaners, then, in combination with the strategies the district is already using, including masking and HVAC upgrades, are the best solution I see to make sure that every classroom has clean air. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, is there anybody else that would like to address the school committee in the audience? Okay, seeing none? No, I'm sorry. Hello, Dr. Altman.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, thank you.
I'm Dr. Wayne Altman, family physician in Arlington and chair of the Department of Family Medicine at Tufts, and most importantly, parent of rising 9th and 10th graders here in the Woburn Public Schools. I don't have a lot of new things to say from a few weeks ago, but a few quick things, so I'll keep my remarks brief. We talked about last time an off-ramp of the masking for schools in the high school with an evidence-based 80% threshold for the high school community. That has since been essentially endorsed by DESE and by the entire state of Vermont, who is proposing this off-ramp. We would also, within that off-ramp, encourage kids who are not vaccinated to mask, not mandate, but encourage the kids who are not vaccinated to mask. We would also strongly encourage for there to be an on-ramp with this off-ramp. There are lots of different ideas about what an on-ramp could look like. Some people say community infection rates. Some people don't like the idea of community infection rates. When a child becomes infected with COVID, often it's a very mild infection that is often not very contagious compared to adults, for example. And some propose that hospitalization rates in a community would be a more important on-ramp. DESE is likely to make a recommendation around such an on-ramp in the coming week or two, and I'd propose we wait for that recommendation. It's likely to be a reasonable recommendation for us to consider. We have teamed up with a group of infectious disease, family medicine, and pediatric experts in the state who are all supporting this and would be eager to do research to study how this proposal would affect the city of Woburn. Specifically, we would need to do some clear marketing so that the entire community knows that if you have kids in the high school and you'd like them to be able to take their masks off, everybody needs to get vaccinated so we can get to that 80% rate. And it'd be really interesting. We don't know how this experiment would play out. We might not get to 80%, and this might all be a moot point, or maybe we do get to 80%, and it's an interesting experiment that would be part of a national discussion, actually. And so we would have to put some careful thought into what the marketing of this proposal would look like. And we're calling this proposal a smile at the end of the tunnel. Thought you'd like that. And of course, available to the school committee offline if you need any support with the consideration of this program.
Thank you so much, Dr. Altman.
Very welcome.
Okay, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to come before the school committee? Public comment?
Madam Chair, I don't know if the young ladies had their printable copies to give our secretary or not for the minutes.
The young ladies.
So the speakers, earlier
Would any of the
speakers.
speakers like to pass in any of their written testimony to Ms. McLeod?
If you have it handy, ladies.
If you want.
If you want to, it's just
It's-
easier for us to add it to the minutes, if you would.
Thank you. I should add that, I think everybody knows this, but we are being recorded, and anything you say is becoming part of the public record anyways, so thank you for. Thank you, Mr. Mulrennan, for pointing that out. That's helpful. Okay, so anyone else? I'm seeing no more public comments. Okay. Moving on to reports and presentation of superintendent.
We suspend the regular order of business.
Well, why don't I finish my sentence? Reports and presentation of superintendent and staff, and I have a motion to take C out of order. Is that right?
Yes.
You
Okay.
can read mine.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Awesome. So could Mr. David Dunkley? We're hearing you out of order, sir, if you'd like. And then
We're
next,
gonna do Linda Riley first.
oh,
Dr.
okay.
Riley and Dave.
Dave lives in New Hampshire.
Because Mr. Dunkley lives in New Hampshire? So is that okay?
She'll be fast.
For full transparency, I had talked to Dr. Riley about that. She was very gracious to let Mr. Dunkley go first.
I
That's
think
okay.
his is gonna be longer,
Yeah.
but whatever you want.
Okay, Mr. Dunkley.
All right, so, okay. Flip a coin.
Thank you,
Jay's
Dr.
back.
Riley, for your graciousness in this regard. Okay,
I'm not going
Mr.
to look a
Dunkley.
gift horse in the mouth. I'm just going to give an update on what we've been doing for COVID.
Thank you.
DESE has been very vague, which we all know on the direction and guidance, other than recently coming up with the mask mandate. A little about the PPE. I surveyed all the schools' stock and supply of PPE, and what I found lacking was children's masks. All the other schools have ample supply of adult masks, hand sanitizer, sanitizing wipes, disinfectant, gowns, gloves, face shields. We have ordered and we've received children's masks. They came in this week. I will get them to the schools next week. We are continuing with some strategies from last year. Custodians are setting up classrooms with all students facing the same direction with the intent of maintaining 3 feet distance between students. There'll be hand sanitizing stations set up at all entrances in all schools. Water bubblers and coolers. Mouthpieces have been secured. We're in the process of installing more bottle filling stations throughout the schools. All sink faucets and bottle filling stations will be flushed next Tuesday and Wednesday. Our operation with ventilation from last year will continue this year. We have started ventilating all the schools for 7 days, 24/7. We will continue to ventilate 2 hours before the start of the school day, up to 2 hours after the finish of the school day. We've upgraded last year our filters that were not MERV 13s. We've upgraded all our rooftop equipment to have either MERV 13 or HEPA filters. We've continued to use the upgrade filters in all our filter replacements. All our filters have been replaced, ready to go for this year. The effort from everyone in the strategies from last year worked. And we're going to continue with those strategies this year.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dunkley. Any questions from the school committee? Mr. Kissel?
You had mentioned at the beginning that the masks were, you didn't have a lot of children's masks, but then you said you got them in, so we good? Or
We just got in 8,000
Okay,
children
all right.
masks and 8,000 small children's masks.
Okay.
So we're good for PPEs for this year.
Good. And the other day, Bob Elkanah had mentioned 16,000, was it, masks? So I'm assuming,
That was the 16,000 that I had mentioned on Monday that were on order and coming in, and obviously they came in today.
Gotcha.
And I believe that kind of gives us all masks of all sizes. I think we're up over 50,000 across the district.
Yes.
excellent. Okay, sound like it right now. Oh, actually, one more. You mentioned the bubblers. You're working on filling stations, but the bubblers themselves are capped off? I mean, tell me what...
They're secured. They're either wrapped or they're shut off.
Oh, it's secured, meaning they're not usable?
They're secured. They're not usable.
Okay, that's why I wasn't sure what that meant.
Anything with the mouthpiece.
Yeah, and then the filling stations, when are you thinking on that?
We've started to install them this year. We're halfway through. It's an ongoing project.
So is through administration to Dave or vice versa, are we doing any other type of water? Are we just encouraging them to bring their own bottled water, or the kids that, would like to
We
have-
installed 25 bottle filling stations last year, and we're heavily used. So we invested in another 25,
Oh, okay, all right,
and we're getting them out.
gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kissel. Dr. Wells?
Yeah, so did you want to speak about the classroom HEPA filters, and sort of your views on this? And
All our equipment is working up to code. We're bringing in at least 10 CFMs of fresh air for all the occupants, which is what's required. To try to get up to 4, 5, 6 air changes per hour, our equipment's working the way it was designed.
so what was, so there was a reference, I think, to a DESI standard?
DESI's not giving us a standard.
Okay. So that was just the Harvard Good Building Standard recommendation, it wasn't a DESI standard?
I'm sorry?
The 5 changes of air in the classroom, was that not a DESI standard?
I'm not too sure if it is a DESI guidance or not.
Okay.
Mr. Lipsitt?
So I wondered, as we had public comments in this area, I wondered if you could give us a sense of what our current ranges are in terms of air changes per hour, and your thoughts in terms of how that balances with rooftop units. You have schools that don't have rooftop units. How are we improving ventilation in those classrooms? For example, Vesta or Kennedy.
Well, again, the equipment is running the way it was designed and built, so those schools are old.
Right.
I looked at the plans, and the White School's getting 2.3 air changes per hour. The high school's getting just over 3. I did not look at any other schools. It's easy to figure out if it's 100% fresh air coming in the high school and the White School classrooms are.
Okay. In your view, are there easy solutions to improving that type of rate, especially at schools that don't have built-in?
There is no easy solution. You're talking replacing equipment, increasing duct size. It's a massive investment.
Okay. So in your view, HEPA filters like the ones we have in this room are not really an option for customers?
We
Just trying to address the issues behind the
bought
problem.
like 50 of them last year, and I put them strategically in rooms that didn't have operable windows.
Okay.
And that was my strategy then. I don't discourage anybody from opening a window or a door.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Mrs. Chisholm?
I just wanted, because we did receive an email from some parents today or yesterday concerning the air quality and stuff, especially in the older schools, the ones getting the Alta Vesta. And we just want to make sure that we hear them and we acknowledge their concerns and their fears. And I know that they're expensive to purchase and operate, and filters are expensive. Is there a way that I'm not going to put you on the spot tonight, but maybe at the next meeting, if you could just provide us, or just via email, what the cost would be for that?
I can
Yeah.
add up all the rooms
Yeah,
and
just so
come up
that
with a
we
cost.
could, if that is needed, if it's going to make parents feel more comfortable, if that's something that we can do. I mean, we do have money that we got for COVID, if that's something that's going to increase, and help the air quality in these rooms. might be something we want to look at, just so that we feel that we're listening to parents' concerns. You know, and I mean-
Honestly,
And I know it's not your problem that we
Right,
have these
it's-
old buildings, and it's, but at the same time, we have buildings that are air-conditioned. We don't want the windows opened. So
Yeah.
if the buildings are air-conditioned, we're not opening windows. I just want to make sure people know that there's reasons why it's not happening, but we
Yeah.
are addressing it, and we are listening to them, and
You know,
I'm sure you are too, and I'm sure you're
Yeah.
concerned, and you're taking care of it, but just want to make sure that we are letting their voices be heard.
yeah.
So if you could
I
just-
honestly believe our schools are in good shape.
Okay, all right. But I mean, just give us a rough thing so we know.
I
It's going
can
to cost us.
do a cost
If we
for you.
wanted to do 2 of the older schools, or maybe the middle schools or whatever, would it cost us 200,000? Would it cost us, I have no idea. I have no idea what these things cost. I don't have one in my own home, but I just,
Mhm.
so if we could do that, I just
I
don't want it
can,
to
I
be.
can get that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Dunkley? Mr. Mulrennan, and then Dr. Wells?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, David. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Kind of go off track a little bit away from COVID, if you don't mind, because I know each and every September, either before school starts or a little after school begins, we have you before us to tell us the projects, emphasis of what you did over the summer, and projects we know across the hall, things are happening with your special ed division over there for office rearranging. Any other projects, even just, I know as school was ending last year, there was a concern addressing the Kennedy groundskeeping efforts and things like that, beautification plans, just if you have anything you want to, get off a little bit of COVID, just because we're about to open next week.
Right. The schools are ready to open. The big thing that we lacked this summer was getting summer help. We normally hire 14 college-age students. I could only get 7. We advertised, we seeked, we couldn't get people. So a lot of the grounds work that we normally do, which is pushing back everything that is encroaching, wasn't accomplished this year. So that was the big negative. We had, the schools are ready to go. They're
Great.
clean.
Ready to go next week.
Yeah, we're ready for them.
All right. Thank you for that update, David. Appreciate all your work from all you guys and women.
Thank you, Mr. Mulrennan. Dr. Wells?
Yeah, could we just clarify whether there is any DESI guidance on air changes and so forth? Just-
I don't believe I've seen any
Okay.
DESI guidance on air change.
Okay. Maybe we can get that from the information. I thought that's what.
I usually, that's regulations, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I've seen other schools adopt,
Right.
right, in very good air changing, they looked at air changing very specifically, so
I
that's
thought
been
that-
helpful.
Maybe I misunderstood the speaker. I thought there was an issue with that.
Well, we could easily find that out.
Yeah.
That's what all I'm asking.
Okay. Anyone else for Mr. Dunkley? Is there any, with the HEPA filters, I'm calling them HEPA, I don't know. Are there any electricity issues or any other barriers by putting them in the classrooms? I have this thought about electricity using,
Well, they would draw.
Yeah.
I mean, I can calculate that out also, what the cost would be to run them.
yeah,
And then it's the ongoing cost of replacing filters for the HEPA units. They're
Okay.
not cheap, they're expensive,
Yeah.
anywhere from $30 to $50 per unit.
and air changes, so it must be so variable, because some teachers have doors open, some teachers have windows open. How do you calculate an average air change in a classroom? And how
Truly,
does-
you'd have to bring in a mechanical engineer to go through
Okay.
and take a look at everything.
Okay, so it's like an average type of, like, you could have, if you have smaller kids in a classroom, does that impact it?
Not the rate of the air
No,
change.
okay.
It
All
will,
But if
Not
it's
the rate of
like
the air
it's in
change.
if it's a classroom that's near, like the door in the front of the building, that would change the air change.
it would. It would also change how the wind's blowing outside. So which way is
Okay.
it pushing or pulling the air in and out of those windows?
Okay, all right. I think I was just trying to understand. I appreciate it, Mr. Dunkley. Okay, are we done with this guy?
Sorry, just one more question.
I'm sorry, Ms. Cormier.
Sorry, just real quick. So the numbers that, for instance, Bob that you had mentioned, where did those numbers come from? How did we get those for the high school and the Malcolm White?
Looking off the design plans. The design plans for the blueprints of the building.
Uh-huh. And it was calculated, or I don't
I-
understand?
Those units have 100% fresh air. They're heat recovery units. and it shows you on the plans how many CFM is coming out of the classroom diffusers. So it's math. Just multiply it by 60, figure out the square footage, divide it, and then that gives you your air change rate.
Okay. So the units are functional, but it's an average based on, it's not actually a measurement. It's not been measured.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Everyone have a good night. Let's have a good year.
Thank you.
So to wrap up, then Mr. Bentley will give us some information about how much it would cost to get the HEPA filters in each classroom. Okay, that sounds like a good step.
And we'll clarify that there's no regulations or guidance.
Yes, and then the superintendent will
Yeah, thank you.
let us know if there is in fact suggesting regulation. If I had my phone, I would look it up, but I left my
I
phone.
started to, but I didn't want to be on my phone during the meeting, so.
Oh, all right, thank you, Mr. Kissel, I appreciate that. All right, Dr. Riley.
I started, there is something.
So, Dr. Crowley, would you like to introduce Dr. Riley?
Sure, very briefly, and then you can fire questions to Dr. Riley. But anyway, just within the last few weeks, it's a pleasure to appoint Dr. Linda Riley to the position of interim principal at the Alta Vista Elementary School. That position was created, as everyone here knows, because Marissa Boyajian became the Human Resource Director. Dr. Riley's been in the Woburn Public Schools for many years, serving both as a foreign language teacher at Woburn Memorial High School and then also at the Linscott Elementary School as an EL teacher. And so just recently earned her doctorate at UMass Lowell, I believe a year ago, and or a couple years ago now. Time flies when you're having fun, especially in COVID. But anyway, it's exciting. I think Dr. Riley can speak to the past couple weeks. We've had new staff orientation. We had a full-day principal meeting today. There's a lot of moving parts to get ready for the school year. We have full confidence that she's going to do a great job. She had popsicles on the playground last week, I believe, to meet some of the families. And so I will turn it over to the committee to, or to Dr. Riley to make any kind of statement you want. And
Yeah, so Dr. Riley, why don't you just, this is obviously not an interview, just a chance to tell us how you're excited to be the interim Alta Vista principal.
I am so beyond excited. As Dr. Crowley stated, I've worked in Woburn for 15 years. I've been in education for over 20. And, I taught K to 21, actually. I teach as an adjunct professor at UMass. And I found myself teaching these doctoral courses filled with superintendents and principals. And I'm teaching them, and I'm thinking, hey, I want to do that. So, I've had a lot of great mentors within Woburn Public School, and the most recent move that I made was to be the director of the summer school program at the Shamrock Elementary, and that just solidified my desire to have my own building. Like Dr. Crowley said, it's just been a few weeks, but it was definitely not like sign here and then good luck. It has been so much that Woburn Public Schools, Dr. Crowley, the admin team is really helping out the new leaders, and it's just a lot of learning happening. And then I've also, like he said, I've met a lot of the families and the kids already from the Alta Vista community, and I'm just super excited. I have 3 major goals. One is I want to be really visible to parents, and I want to promote engagement and family involvement and community involvement. And my second is I want to be really visible to the teachers, and I want to go on a listening tour and see what the Alta Vista is all about. And my third is I really want to just have this incredibly amazing culture and excitement and engagement from the students, from the teachers, from the staff, from everybody. So I think that, those are my 3. And I'm not very good at ending sentences. I end at that.
Well, thank you. Would you mind if the school committee asks some questions to you?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Dr. Wells.
Yeah, thank you. Congratulations. So The one question that I usually ask the principal, because every principal comes to the building with some special skill or something they want to bring to the classroom, some like specialize in math, and so they want to go in the classroom and do some math things. And so maybe from your background, what kind of things would you like to bring to a classroom, say you go to visit? And
So I think my biggest strength and my passion is really inclusivity
Yeah.
and kind of leading the charge with helping teachers to develop more inclusive lessons for all students.
And I noticed, Vic, you have a foreign language background too?
Yes.
Yes.
I am bilingual,
Yeah.
working on becoming multilingual. I keep saying that, and then something always happens that throws me off course.
Yeah.
But I'm fluent in both, in Spanish.
Hopefully you'll get to utilize that in making your school more inclusive.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Mr. Lipsick?
First of all, congratulations and welcome, and we're thrilled to have you in this position.
Thank you.
The Alta Vesta is, I think, has our most multicultural student body in terms of diverse student body. This is an area I know you have some direct interest in, some direct experience in. I wondered if you might speak a little bit to how do you enhance a school culture when you've got families from widely different backgrounds coming together, where there may be language barriers, there may be other types of barriers. Talk a little bit about how you hope to sort of continue to build that community build.
So that's a great question, and to me, that's what brings me joy. It actually doesn't feel like work. So I love engaging families, and I think that the first thing in doing that successfully is understanding them and what they have to bring and what their experiences are and how they feel, and just in promoting, them all coming into the building pre-COVID, hopefully soon, and in engaging them on multiple levels, not just on some of the more traditional ways that American schools invite parents in, for example. So understanding their culture, their background, their strengths, and their comfort levels. And that actually is like a little investigative thing that I do that brings me joy.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Mrs. Chisholm?
Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you.
Your enthusiasm is wonderful, and I can imagine at an elementary level that's something that really needs to shine. So
Thank
I'm
you.
sure you're going to be great, and I'm thrilled that we promote from within. I think that gives the whole body of people here something to look forward to. So welcome. Let us know if there's anything that we can do for you to help out. I mean, we can volunteer to read if you need somebody. Good at that.
Thank you so much.
I have a Dr. Seuss hat ready to go. So, have a great year.
Thank you, Ms. Chisholm. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Ms. Riley. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I did have the opportunity over the summer to stop by the ESY program, both as a school board member and with the firefighters on kind of like a touch a truck day. And again, as Mrs. Chisholm indicated, your enthusiasm for the program over there at the Shamrock for those students and the staff, and the organizational skills that you got to place for that day to make it all happen. And obviously, any administrator in the room will tell you there's bumps along the way, and you handle those bumps miraculously. And, the kids enjoyed themselves just as much as the fire guys did. Again, from an outside observer, my wife was with me that day. She couldn't say enough about just sitting back and watching the program over there at the Shamrock. So I think being a neighbor of the Alta Vesta, I think you're going to do wonderful up there. I think you've got a great basis of staff up there, and the families you're going to be working with. I know they'll get to know you and see your, as Mrs. Chisholm indicated, your enthusiasm and your passion. I think you're going to use all those skills in the right way at the Alta Vesta for our staff and our students. So welcome, and if you need anything, you know where to turn.
Thank you so much.
Mike or
Thank you, Ms. Mulrennan. Anyone else? Oh, great. So, Dr. Riley, I want to thank you for your grace in waiting to speak to us. But the ventilation stuff was, kind of pressing, so I really appreciate your patience. I want to say that on behalf of the school committee, we are so excited to have you as a principal, and we try to nurture a culture where we want people to be inspired to be education leaders. So that's what we want to do for you, and if you ever need anything, I want you to come here and sit here and ask us for it.
Okay, thank you so
Know
much.
that your opinion will be deeply respected.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Dr. Wells.
I just wonder if the superintendent could explain sort of you mentioned she's interim principal, so what's the thought going forward?
Sure, so just predicated on the timing of everything, we posted it as an interim for this year, and then presumably we'll open up a search in the spring, the regular search, and of course, Dr. Riley is more than...
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure what the time frame was going to be.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
All right, great, thank you.
Will
So
we
now,
return to regular order of business?
Second.
any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. So now we will consider the proposal from Mayor Scott Galvin, the proposed mandated testing and vaccination policy. And I'm aware of the fact that policy did take action on this, but I think Dr. Wells has a comment.
I just had a question.
Sure.
It's not clear to me under what legal authority he's doing this, and does this require union negotiations? You know, if he has legal authority to institute it, that's one thing, or if it's a negotiation thing, that's another thing, and I'm just not clear where this falls.
I can answer. So we're technically instituting it tonight if we approve it. He did speak to the union regarding this policy coming down the line. I believe they had 2 conversations, so I can speak on that. But technically, we will be instituting the policy in alignment with the city. So so it's our legal authority to approve this, and we could not approve it as well.
But is it a negotiation item? That's what I'm trying to determine. Does it have to be negotiated with the unions, or is there some legal authority that allows us to bypass negotiations to do this?
So we've had conversations with the WTA. The WTA had a direct conversation with the mayor. I've had a conversation today about this policy, and we've sent it to the SEIU. And this was drafted by the city of Woburn, not by us. And so presumably the city solicitor was engaged in this process. And so I'm not sure the legal authority, I'm not sure how to answer your question. I'm assuming that he does somehow have the legal authority to do this.
What I just don't want to get is a situation where you institute a policy and then we're brought before a judge saying we're violating negotiation rights of unions.
No,
And
that's fair. It's a fair
It's not
question.
clear to me, you know, his discussions with them, what I'd like to see is some kind of written document indicating that the unions are going to go along with this before we institute it, or we begin negotiations before we institute it. Because otherwise, I think we're acting in bad faith if we institute a policy that requires negotiations. That's just my concern.
I can report that we can go into executive session for the purpose of talking about our stance on this policy with regards to collective bargaining. The executive session is on the agenda if you'd like to do that.
So then we don't act on this right now?
Well, we could go into, we can finish the agenda, we can go into executive session if you'd like to talk about the legal ramifications of this. I think and it would be in anticipation of potential negotiations, so we could do that.
And all policy did was recommend that we bring it in
Yeah.
front. We didn't vote on it.
Okay, so we can do that.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I have questions about this, would we say that for executive session as well? Or should we discuss it now?
It depends.
Okay.
Yeah, if your questions are, Dr. Wells has raised the concept that we should be talking about this in terms of management in labor negotiations. So to that extent, I think we should
Do
delay
that
the
first.
conversation for the executive session. And if anything happens that we can announce to the public, we will, to be fully transparent.
Okay,
So
thank you.
so I would hold your question, ask it in exec, and then if it doesn't impact our position in collective bargaining, then we'll come out in public and ask it there.
Very
That
good.
make sense? Okay, great.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to the mask policy, which was considered in policy. And I have this as a potential, see what you guys think about this. Since school hasn't started yet, and since we have a mask mandate in place, one idea I had would be to table the DESI October 1st, 80% policy discussion until the end of September. And so then we're abiding by DESI, and we could further discuss it once we have data on the first sort of 3 weeks of school. Maybe we would be more informed about the community at that point. So basically, I'm asking is, what does the committee think about tabling this till the end of September? Which our mask mandate would, of course, stay in place with our previous vote. Yes, Dr. Wells.
The only problem with that is we don't have an active policy, and that usually guides the administration on how to deal with people and so forth. So I think, there's sort of a whole, if somebody violates the mask thing, what does the administration do? There's no policy guiding how they act.
Is there a draft for us? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was just because right now we have DESI guidelines.
Right.
And we have a mask mandate. So the administration would be guided by DESI and by the...
There's so few people in the school that I think the risk of people running afoul of the policy has been very low.
Yeah.
Once everybody comes back, there's more issues could arise. And I think we put our administrators in a bad situation where they're looking for guidance from policy like they always do on how they react. So,
Mrs. Chisholm.
So wouldn't it be if DESI had something that was mandated, we'd have to follow it whether or not we had a policy?
Yes.
That's my interpretation.
Okay, so I think we'd be all set with tabling until the end of September. If in fact there's stuff out there that we do have that we follow that's not actually in our policy.
DESI has sorry.
So, just because I just don't know who overrides.
Yeah. So the nuance, and I might defer to Dr. Baldessari because he's been kind of
deep into this.
Deep into the merging of the policies.
Just past my math.
Yeah, but I think it may. One of the things, the DESI guidance has a particular age and so forth that we might want to be cognizant of. So.
So at the policy and safety subcommittee meeting, I did a PowerPoint presentation, and the information that I presented came from two data sources. One was the actual Department of Elementary and Secondary Education directive, and the second was just a consideration of guidance from the Council for the Massachusetts Association for School Superintendents. So the draft policy that you have, the language comes pretty much directly from the department's guidance. And if you take a look at the PowerPoint that you have here on the last page, you'll find that in addition to what we had in the MASC reference manual policy that they had authored on August 10th. My recommendation was to have the addition of what's available in the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education directive, and that was to allow the masks to be removed for certain elective classes with added mitigation. An example of that is in band, where students would be playing the trumpet. They could maybe cut a hole in the mask so that they could play the trumpet, or they might be an extended distance apart, or they might be outside, or different things that would be approved by the school principal. The policy would remain in place until, in the MASC policy, it's rescinded, but I said amended because we are anticipating the Department of Education to bestow upon us new wisdom at the end of the month. The 80% exemption language that is contained in the DESE policy is also not in the MASC reference manual policy. So I encourage that the exemption language be added so that if a school does reach 80% of the children and the adults being vaccinated, then the principal or the superintendent would be able to act in accordance with Dr. Altman's recommendation. And then finally, the department said that the masks are required for children ages 5 and old. And in our policy, we said all children. So we did not give any dispensation from mask wearing for children under the age of 5 in the recommended that you have. But the recommended that you have is a combination of what comes from the department and what is available in the MASC reference manual policy, which is very similar to the policy that you had voted last year when we went through this to open school, probably close to a year ago today. It might be exactly for a year ago today.
Okay, Mr. Lipset.
I just have one thing to add there, and I concur with Dr. Wells that I think it's important we have a guiding policy. I concur with Dr. Wells very. The October 1st deadline and in the proposal to table this until a meeting in later September, my concern continues to be that this is not enough time to really understand what COVID, what the Delta variant is doing in our schools. If we're talking about a meeting in later September, we're talking about maybe 2 weeks of open school before we have to use that data to make a decision. I don't think we would have a complete picture at that time. So that's my ongoing concern with the October 1st date as it exists in this policy, but then also if we were to table this until a later time.
Okay. I think that we wouldn't necessarily be. I think that right now we don't have anything, so it's hypothetical.
And that's
so at least then
right.
we would have something. But okay. So I was just giving some. So what is?
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the policy that came out of the policy subcommittee.
Second.
Okay. So I have a second to approve the.
Second.
And can we just for the
EBCFA face coverings.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Did you read my minutes?
Oh, yes, I did.
Very
and
extensive.
so, Mr. Kissel, why don't you tell us what policy did and
All
what's
right.
in this
It took
policy?
a long time to create these, John. Don't jump right to it. So the policy subcommittee met on 8/30/21 at 1:30, both in person and in Zoom. Present was myself, Dr. Baldessari, Chair Ellen Crowley, Bob Alcanada, Pat Chisholm, Colleen Cormier by Zoom, Dr. Matt Crowley, and Courtney Young. I don't know if I missed anyone.
I zoomed in late.
There were some.
Well, I didn't put any non-policy committee members on it because.
But we did have some public participation.
Yes, yeah. No, those are the
Members.
members. 2 citizens spoke, Heidi and Don Richards, against the mask mandate. Chairman Chris myself did note that based on their issues, anyone with IEPs and special needs could talk to the principals of their schools and see what can be done to accommodate them. No guarantees, but there is that option. DESE implemented a new directive stating that all students and staff, vax or no vax, need to wear masks while in school buildings and on school buses. This was implemented August 25th, 24th. I didn't understand the paperwork, but I put 25th, 2021. The state required plan that they asked of our school system was submitted by administration on August 27th. With that in mind, Dr. Baldessari tweaked our policy from a vote taken 7-0 on August 17th school committee meeting to reflect a few changes indicated in red, which I believe everyone got a copy of this, so anything in red is obviously new. Policy to the EBCFA face covering policy. Added paragraph, which everyone can read, but I'll read out loud. In accordance with DESE guidance on after October 1st, 2021, if a school demonstrates a vaccination rate of 80% or more of students and staff in the school, then vaccinated individuals in that school will no longer be subject to this face covering requirement. The district will comply with DESE guidance with regard to demonstrating the 80% rate threshold in the school. Added line, also in red, face masks or face coverings will not be required during certain elective classes with other applied mitigation. The words amended or added to this policy will remain in place until amended or rescinded by the school committee. Also added was the website at the bottom of the DOE, well, DESE, but it was as written as doe.mass.edu and so on. The question of compliance by staff and students at the high school regarding wearing masks if the 80% threshold was met, since vaxxed persons could go maskless and unvaxxed would have to be masked, both in the hallway and in the classrooms. The administration mentioned that since the only school that would have the best chance of being 80% or above was the high school. Principal Callahan did mention to them or told them that she would have no problem enforcing the mask policy on unvaxxed students and staff. Vote was taken 2-1 to bring the new updated policy to the full school committee member. And I do have an amendment. I guess it's 3-0. We assume all three said yes, but because it was 2-1, myself and Pat Chisholm were to bring it to the full committee, and Member Colleen Cormier was against bringing that vote. I think that's how we had worded it, so it was 2-1. Dr. Baldessari also indicated, as a district, can do more for safety than the DESE directive, but not less than. So we can go beyond their directive, but obviously we can't go less. Also addressed was the proposal, I won't get into that necessarily because we just voted on it, but we did bring up the mayor's vaccination policy, and there were some questions about unions and so on. So we did adjourn at 2:40, and that is it for my minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Kissel. Okay, so I have a motion to adopt this policy, and basically it's a mask mandate with, after October 1st, if the vaccination rate is 80% of more students and staff in the school are vaccinated, then students that have been vaccinated no longer are subject to this policy. So that's the main thing that we're talking about. So,
Second that motion, Madam Chair.
second, and do I have any discussion on that motion?
On the motion?
Yes, Mr. Lipset.
My concern again is with the date of October 1st. I don't believe that gives us enough time to really understand where we are. At our previous meeting, Dr. Wells had offered a date of October 31st. That was before we had a DESE mandate and before we had that information in this proposal. I would like to offer an amendment that we change the date in this policy for the DESE, for the vaccination off-ramp, as it was put, to kick in as October 31st rather than October 1st. It gives us a little bit more time to see where we are. 2-3 weeks is perhaps not enough. We know that numbers, or we suspect that numbers are going to continue to grow. We know that the transmissibility of this virus makes it particularly dangerous, and I want to give us a little bit of additional time.
Thank you, Mr. Lipset. I have an amendment
I'll
on the
second the
motion.
amendment.
And I have a second on the amendment. Do we have to vote on the amendment?
Yes, you vote
Okay.
on the amendment first.
All
and then on
right,
the-
so let's vote on the amendment, on the motion to change the policy from October 1st to October 31st.
31st is
All in favor?
Sunday, right?
No.
I think,
No.
Madam Chair, just
Sorry.
to proceed, I think you vote on the amendment first.
I vote yes, we are,
Yeah,
to
okay.
change it from October 1st to October,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
So let's have a vote on that.
Hang on
All-
one second. Madam Chair, just want to see something. So that's a Sunday. Do we have a problem being a Sunday as opposed to,
We can make it November 1st.
it doesn't matter. I mean, obviously, it will just go by the numbers up to that point.
Because we definitely don't want to have kids wearing masks on Halloween.
That's exactly
Right.
right.
All in
Unless they're
favor?
in small packets.
Hold on.
Yeah, we
Let's
got,
do a roll call vote, please.
this is for 31st.
Yes.
To go against.
It's just the amendment.
recommendation that we follow.
Let's hear it. Dr. Crowley?
Ms. Chisholm,
No.
Ms. Cormier,
No.
Mr. Lipset,
Yes.
Mr. Kissel,
No.
Mr. Morenin,
No.
Dr. Wells.
Yes.
Ms. Crowley.
Yes. So that motion fails. We're back to the drawing board. So we are,
Motion to adopt that as presented.
okay, motion to adopt as presented then.
I'd like
with
to
the-
offer an amendment as well.
Sure. Yes?
I would like to remove the entire paragraph. I don't think that giving any indication that we would be in favor of an 80% off-ramp, as Dr. Altman stated, and to clarify, Dr. B, Dr. Altman wanted, I believe, once we reach the 80% threshold, for no masks in the building, vaxxed and unvaxxed. But
This isn't.
this is for the vaccinated, and I think that would basically be a logistical nightmare. I think, and while we're not discussing the 80% necessarily, I think even giving any kind of indication that that's a possibility is problematic.
Okay, I have
Madam Chairman.
yep.
But at the last meeting, we endorsed, meeting with Dr. Ullman,
Yes.
and that was sort of his proposal anyways, and I thought the committee was interested in sort of this, if we take the 31st as the date, and
We're not.
as I'm saying, if we took the 31st as the date, that would give us time to look at the proposal, Dr. Ullman, and work out the conditions and so forth.
And potentially
Right.
Principal Callahan could.
But as I
show us
recall,
how she-
what we voted on was to implement the mask mandate, period, until October 31st and reevaluate,
With a
nothing to
working
do
group.
with the vaccinations. Is that
Okay,
correct?
so her amendment is to delete the paragraph in total. So, I don't know if that's, okay, so all,
Yes, and a second, Madam.
you haven't had a second.
Second.
Okay, so we have a second. So all in favor of deleting the
On the
paragraph?
motion, Madam Chairman.
Yes, I'm sorry, any discussion on the amendment?
Yeah,
Sorry, Dr. Wills.
I think, we have to think about, ways of moving forward. I think we have adequate protections, and by taking the original amendment for the 31st, I think was a good step. There's nothing that says we can't change this policy, October 26th and say, we're not ready yet. But by taking this out, we're really not giving the public a chance to see. We think there may be ways that we can go back to a more normal classroom if certain percentage and so forth. We won't know what we can do. I don't know today what's going to happen, but at least it gives the opportunity for people to say, yes, Desi's saying, other people are saying, there's a possibility that we may be able to coexist with this virus if a certain percentage of people are done, vaccinated and so forth. So I think remove the whole paragraph. I know it just strikes me as that we're just saying we don't know what we're doing, and we're not giving any hope down the road.
On the motion?
Okay, she's a nurse. Yes, Ms. Cormier.
I think we know what we're doing, but I don't think anyone knows what is going on with this virus at this point. With vaccinated people transmitting the virus, this is a problem. And I think, just like you said, if we can go in on October 26th and amend this, why can't we go in on October 26th if things look amazing and add this back in? I don't think we should give the public a false sense of security. I don't know when this ends. I think that we just have to keep going forward as we are until we get something different. And we can change that at any time. But keeping the kids in school is basically all I want to do. And the only way to do that is to keep masks on faces. They say that we can meet or exceed the minimum by DESI, and to me, this is exceeding it in the good for the public.
Okay, so, give me a second. Okay, any more discussion on the amendment? Mrs. Chisholm.
I think that without giving people a sense of a goal, it's going to defeat the purpose. Because if you're not going to tell them there's an end game, and we don't know the end game, people are double vaccinated, they're wearing masks, they're hibernating, they're getting it. We have to have an end game to this. People have got to have a reason to do what we want them to do. And if you're telling me you want kids in masks forever, it's never going to work. You're going to have a revolt, and it's not going to be pretty. So we have to be able to say that there's some reason to get vaccinated. If we remember back a year and a half ago when Fauci said, get vaxxed, lose the mask, science changes. So we have to be able to have some reason to push forward. And if DESI is telling us, and everybody wants to follow DESI, let's go with this. Let's give people hope that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So I think we need to just wear the masks, open schools, see what happens. If it gets horrendous, we can come back and see it. We leave it up to the administration. Mrs. Callahan had said she can do this at the high school. She runs that building. We don't. So that's up to her. She said that she has no problem being able to obtain this and encourage the kids to get vaccinated so they can lose the masks. And if you say, no, we're not going to give this, it's kids are kids. I raised 4 of them. There's got to be a light at the tunnel. You have to hold that carrot out there. So I think that we need to just go forward with this policy, and we can visit it. We can always meet, and if all of a sudden we have half the high school out, we can change it. God willing, we don't have to go there.
Okay, Ms. Chisholm. Mr. Kissel.
A quick question. I mean, I'm not sure if we're addressing the 80% vaccination rate in hopes that people get vaccinated.
Right.
But as we know, vaccinated people still can not only be carriers, but they can also get sick again.
Yes.
So
Ms. Cormier saying. Yeah.
Yes, but I'm also asking, are we looking at
Transmission, that's what we're looking at. The goal is that there'll be less transmission. That's what the hope is, with the 80%. That's what.
Yeah, that's the hope. I mean, just to say we hit 80% masks off, to find out that, we've got hospitalizations huge. I'm just wondering, this doesn't address that. This doesn't address the, well, it
It
doesn't.
could do, but the administration could make the call.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So this is all fluid. That's kind of what I want
Right.
to get out there, to everyone's point. We can have an end date, to your point, not an ending date, but a date
goal.
we would at least look at.
So, one thing that I am seeing is that I see very clearly how Ms. Cormier feels.
Yeah.
So I deeply appreciate that, and I see how Ms. Chisholm feels. But I have 4 no's for October 31st as a potential 80% threshold. I'm just wondering if any of the no's want to offer a different date. We have October 1st and we have October 31st. Does any of any of you guys want to offer a different,
Well, Madam
in
Chairman.
the middle, something?
Madam Chairman.
Because we're close, we have a 3-4.
No, I know. I know,
So
but
let's make this
I think
happen.
we've sort of demarcated the lines. And I don't think if we were to pick the October 29th
Yes.
or November 15th, I think we'd still run into the same issue.
Well,
Because we have well, Madam Chairman, from my read of the table, we have 3 individuals that are thinking about the what DESI's recommending.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple of people that think we should go a little longer to see what's happening. And then we have one individual that thinks we're not ready to make a date in the policy.
That's right. But
So
I-
it's sort of a broken committee.
Well, I'm
And I
just
don't
wondering
see-
if there's any of the no's could extend it, could we work in the middle? Could we say October 15th?
Madam Chair, if I could.
Yes, Mr. Lipson.
I mean, I think one possible bridge to this is not having to do with the date, but adding another factor into this, which is, as Dr. Altman said, is hospitalization
Yeah,
rate, something
sounds
we could
good.
look at, or transmission rate. To say that if we have that, then on October 31st, we could make this call. That would give, to Ms. Chisholm's point, that would give the public something to look forward to. The idea that if things are either stable or getting better, that might offer the opportunity for this. It also gives us the opportunity to revisit in a timely fashion when we understand where the disease is going, given our school reopening. That seems to me to possibly, and I don't know what my fellow members might think about that proposal, but the idea of tying it to, I personally, I think transmission rate might be the easiest to deal with, especially within our schools. But
That's where I was heading, and John made another comment, so I was heading that way, exactly.
Okay.
Tie something together as opposed to just putting it at the 80%. But
I mean, I will also, if I still have the floor, I do also have to say, when we talk about following DESI's lead, I need to point out that time and time again, through this entire pandemic, DESI has not led. We have not, DESI has been following what committees across this state have been doing. DESI issued their mandate after after committees that serve more than half of the students in the state of Massachusetts had already voted on a mask mandate. So the idea of following DESI, to me, is not something that we should be holding up as a standard. DESI is following us.
So, do you have a motion?
How about, I'll make a suggestion based on Mr. Lewis's thing. How about on or before October 29th, the school committee, we'll put this in that paragraph, on or before October 29th, the school committee will meet and determine whether this paragraph should apply to the policy.
Yeah, that's fine too.
So I rescind my amendment, and then he
September
offers his?
29th, but okay.
Wait a second.
No, wait, you can't.
No, because you said that you needed a policy to guide administration.
Yeah.
So you're saying we can hold this paragraph
That
in abeyance?
that one paragraph,
In abeyance.
no, I'm saying that we can say on or before October 29th, the school committee will meet and review this paragraph to see whether it should be retained.
Okay.
Okay.
The
good.
only problem there is that that paragraph states, in accordance with DESE guidance after October 1st.
Right.
So what we're saying is that on October 29th,
Right.
we would meet to,
Take into account DESI guidance
Okay.
and any other thing that's happening.
but
in
with this
the
paragraph in the policy,
Yep.
on October 1st, we would,
But that's what he's changing.
right, what I'm saying is that
Take out the October
I have to
1st.
take out.
October 1st.
Okay,
Yep.
so, once you vote, then we'll just clarify the language together.
Yeah, or I can,
Yeah.
we'll just take out the October 1st thing. On or before October 29th, the school committee will meet to determine if a school demonstrates vaccination rates
Okay.
80% or more, et cetera, et cetera.
I can do
So,
I think that's what
Yeah.
Mr. Lipset
okay,
was.
so when, okay, just to be recognized.
Oh, yes,
So-
Mrs. Chisholm, sorry.
So what we're saying is this paragraph of the vaccination rate, that's what we're going to vote on that date. So when 80% of the vaccination, I'm not going to say, 80% of the vaccination, all of a sudden we have an influx, we're not going to do it.
No, we're going to say.
This is our policy, when we reach 80%, masks can be off.
No, that's not what he's saying.
That's
That's
not
what
what
this-
I'm
that's
saying.
what this
On or
said.
before
No, that's
October
not
29th, the
saying.
school committee will meet to determine.
we're meeting
No,
on
that's.
or before
Yeah.
29th.
Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, we'll have the meeting of a few weeks ago, and as Mr. Lewis indicated, we had no guidance from DESI. Then there was a cordial meeting here in Woburn. I would call it cordial because we heard later on some other meetings near and dear to us that weren't so cordial as Woburn was, so I appreciate those that attended our meetings and gave input. And here we are tonight. We have some DESI guidance. It went through policy. It's been vetted. I think Dr. B gave us an 8-page legal document through enough legal mumbo jumbo that we can do this on October 1 with the 80% rate, put it on the ordinance so the administrators in their building to deal with it in whichever way they want. We as a community, and I think, you know, on the other packet of papers here, we have a mandatory vaccination rate from our city government trying to get people vaccinated. But here they're going to say, well, there's no rush to get vaccinated anymore because I got the whole month of October. We want people to get vaccinated. The mayor's trying to tell the employees to get vaccinated. We want students and staff to be vaccinated so we can be comfortable and safe within our building. The vaccination clinics that the city are running are ongoing, I believe, Dr. Crowley, maybe they end tomorrow or whatever days this week and next. People can get vaccinated. People should be getting vaccinated. The idea of the vaccination is to hopefully loosen the mask wearing threshold at 80% vaccinated rate. And another paragraph that the mayor gave us, what we had from the Board of Health meeting last time, was the COVID rulings and the COVID numbers throughout the community, which again fluctuate, and they're more flexible than anything. So I think, you know, although, Mr. Lifford, you're right, DESI's DESI. We know what DESI does, but they've finally done something. Other school boards are meeting tonight, tomorrow night, the next night, they're going to adopt it. They may or may not tweak it, but I think the idea of doing it, making it October 1, just like we're saying, if we find out nobody's signed up for vaccination rates, nobody's been vaccinated, the COVID rates are skyrocketing again through whatever measures we're using, we come back to this table, we revisit this policy, and we do what we have to do accordingly. But in the meantime, set a deadline, and Mrs. Chisholm's been trying to say, the policy subcommittee spent a good afternoon on this the other day with a great presentation from Dr. B as to what's out there, what we should be doing, what we want to do. DOE is on here, CDC guidance is on here, so all we want to know is who's going to be running the show. We have kids in high school that have been vaccinated. I believe, and I don't want to quote anybody tonight, but Dr. Crowley may have the numbers for the high school staff and students. Approximately in the building of vaccinated people, 76. We had 76, and that was when we were here last, 2 weeks ago? Yeah. My guess is that number's gone up to improvement beyond that. We could be at 80% tonight. We don't know that. We might be 80% long before October 1. So I think, you know, by keeping it October 1, and Colleen, obviously, I respect your medical background and your thoughtfulness behind this, and vaccinated people are carrying it still, and people are still getting sick from it. But we've got to move on. We've got to keep the kids in the classrooms. And I said it before, this is what it's going to take, wearing a mask up to 80%. And I don't know if I said it at the last meeting, but it was kind of disappointing to sit here as a city last week when a year ago we all would have shared toilet paper. And 2 weeks ago, we were in here fighting about masks and not wearing a mask. And not, you know, we want to come together and make this work. And I think if we can adopt this and make it go through, get it out to the parents and the community, they do have a deadline. They do have a reason to get vaccinated sooner rather than later. And the younger students in the elementary school, again, there's going to be dealing with it with the principals and administrators to deal with. And I believe Dr. B had many pages on the exemptions. He just talked about making a hole in your mask, maybe more mask breaks. We had Mr. Dunkley here, perhaps a couple of those HEPA filters. We're going above and beyond that route, ventilation-wise, along with the social distancing, along with the masking, along with the vaccination. So I think, you know, keep it the way it's been presented by DESI, move it forward, October 1, or prior to October 1, get the findings of the city and the community. If we need to revisit it, revisit it then. I think that was my point at the end of policy the other afternoon. We can go on and on, Ms.
Yeah.
Madam
Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
So that's
yes.
my point, I just wanted to make sure
Thank you, Ms.
I was
Walker.
heard, so thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairman, the good
Yes.
part is, we're kind of squabbling about, a finer point, but at least we're all on the same page, at least for now. We're not having this divide where people shouldn't wear masks, so that's
That's
a
right.
good thing, I think.
Yes, it's a very good
But I
thing.
think, when we're talking about the DESI October 1st date, but you have to remember, many of the schools will, Revere was in school August 31st, so they're going to have more time to review things. No one's saying that, that we shouldn't, when we get that 80%, when we look at that on the 29th or before, we might say, after experiencing a whole month and plus of school, things are looking good. I think we can go that route. Nobody's taking that possibility away, but I think some of us are just worried that we're not going to have enough information in 2 weeks.
And I think that Mr. Lipsett's motion, October 31st, 2021, is a nice balance because it, maybe not for Ms. Cormier, I appreciate that, but I think that gives enough time and gives an off-ramp, so.
I know, but it failed.
The 29th is still on the table.
Another chance.
The 29th is still there, though.
Huh?
The 29th is still available.
I know, the 29th.
But the 29th is essentially a tabling.
Right.
No, I don't see that as a tabling at all.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, I wasn't expressing an opinion on it. I was trying to clarify.
No, I think it's just clarifying that one paragraph. That paragraph will be reviewed on or before October 29th.
Can I try to
Yeah.
sort of summarize just almost for my own use?
Yeah.
So your amendment would be to adopt the policy as written, except that on or before October 29th, we revisit
Yep.
this paragraph, not word for word, not in terms of the October 1st deadline, but revisit based on transmission rates, based
What's
on
happening in the
hospital visits,
community.
based on looking at the whole picture,
Right.
whether we can implement this part of it.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
right.
Okay.
We already.
So is that, you made an amendment?
I thought I did.
Okay.
Do I have to rescind mine
I
first?
think we also have Ms. Cormier's amendment on the floor.
Oh,
Your
you seconded
amendment
that,
was
right,
to
yeah.
delete.
did not.
Okay, so
I
let's
did
vote
second.
on Ms. Cormier's amendment to delete the paragraph in full. All in favor?
No.
No.
Yes.
That motion fails. And I have an amendment to revisit on the 29th,
On or before.
on or before,
Yeah.
and consider multiple things as stated. Okay,
Factors.
all in favor on that?
No.
Aye.
Yes.
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Chisholm.
No.
Ms. Cormier.
Yes.
Mr. Lipset.
Yes.
Mr. Kissel.
Yes.
Mr. Morenin.
No.
Dr. Wells.
Yes.
Ms. Crowley.
Yes, that motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 2. Okay, so,
We have the motion for the full policy.
and let's,
Language?
Right, just for
of course,
clarification on my part.
Ms. Chisholm, yes.
So that's not, so we're not adopting that paragraph because you're saying that if it's not meeting it, then we're not going to allow the 80% threshold, so there's no need to get to 80 because you
No.
know that's going to happen. That it's-
The
it's
amendment
just-
was in accordance with DESI guidance. On October 29th, the school committee will determine if a school demonstrates a vaccination rate. It's just giving us an opportunity to meet again,
Review that particular paragraph.
review all of this and what DESI comes up in the meantime, the guidelines that they're supposed
Okay,
to
so
come.
it's, so again, we're not telling them that if they get vaccinated, this mask
That's
will
right.
go away. Right, so it's going against.
We are
this-
encouraging vaccination
Right, no,
with the
So we're
care.
going against this
Yes.
policy. Okay, that's all I want to make sure that we're going against DESI. So when we tell us what we have to do. Because that's not what this says. This says once you get to 80, the masks can be done.
Yes.
I mean, the thing is as a school board, if we had a school that was busting and this virus goes crazy, I'm sure there would be changes from the administration to have us adopt, things have changed. So that's my bad.
I understand how you,
Yeah.
your
Madam-
position,
Madam
Ms. Chisholm.
Chairman.
But
Yes,
whatever,
Ms.
okay.
Dr.
No,
Wells.
you mentioned that the administration, we're giving ourselves the time to look at the whole situation too, and not putting it necessarily on the administration to come back with us and so forth. We'll look at the situation on or before the 29th and determine what's happening. And I think our goal is to get that, at least some of us, is to get that 80% rate and see that, we're going to have it before then, hopefully, and we'll see what's happening in the school.
Yeah, so you go and get, this is just saying, once you get to the 80, it's done. It's not what's happening.
Right, because I think Madam Chairman, I think there's other factors at play here. just the 80% does not, even the guidance from the Board of Health did not rely just on a certain vaccination rate. I think that's just, we just want to have more information.
Thank you, Dr. Wells.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Are we in the middle of a motion?
I think we have to vote on the
I'm
full
sorry.
policy.
Before someone makes a motion to adopt everything but that paragraph, can,
No?
Dr. Crowley, did you want to mention something?
Just a point,
sorry.
before you vote,
Yeah.
may I clarify the language so that you're voting on, you all know that you're voting on the same language?
Yes, please.
Yes.
On or before October 29, 2021, the Woburn School Committee will convene to determine if a school demonstrates a vaccination rate of 80% or more of students and staff in the school, that vaccinated individuals in that school would no longer be subject to this face covering requirement. If approved, the district would then comply with DESE guidance with regard to demonstrating the 80% threshold in a school.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Just don't tie it to anything else.
And of course, members can consider any other community thing that they want to.
Yeah.
Okay. And we all know how Ms. Chisholm feels about it, so, and we know Ms. Cormier feels about it. All right, everyone was heard. We have a motion to adopt all the,
You should vote.
Yeah, we need to.
I mean,
Can I make a motion to approve this policy?
a little bit.
Yes.
I'm not part of the.
Yeah, but you can, we'd like to
Do we
hear
say
you.
what the amendment?
Well, sort of quickly, right? There's a lot going on. We ran a vaccine clinic the last 3 days this week. We had 70 people show up. Not all 70 were students, so that included community people walking in. As a city, the vaccination rate remains hovers right around 70%. The needle hasn't moved. As the 15 to 19%, it went from 66 to 70%. The 12 to 15 went from 66% to 67%. That does not include some of the, when kids go to CVS and Walgreens or their primary care. It feeds into a system that gets updated weekly. So I'm only going off the information that's most recent. And then I asked, and it's available on the City of Woburn City of Woburn website under the COVID tab. The community percentage went down this week from 2.7, I believe, last week to 2.29 this week. And so, as a community, things have kind of stabilized. Just to contextualize a lot of what people are talking about. Furthermore, on a call with the commissioner last week, he was relatively blunt. You read a study with the forecast for three potentials. One goes high, one goes medium, one goes low. We're all kind of looking at different different things. He indicated that how the metric to reach the 80% was something that DESE was going to kind of tell us in the near future, because it may not be a hard variable, just as you're kind of contextualizing. So I would anticipate DESE to become much more prescriptive in how they're arriving at these percentages in the very near future. He said by the end of this month. But, so again, I understand the idea of the timelines and where people started school and so forth, but I just wanted you to be aware of the city and where DESE was coming from. And this, obviously, as you know, was presented to us after that on the 17th.
Yes.
And so, there we go.
Thank you, Dr. Crowley. That is actually very helpful. Mr. Lipsick.
And just a point of clarification there, if DESE does change how, or add to how that 80% will be met and what the other factors are, we could then also revisit based on that new information. So we have all these options.
Always can do this again.
We have lots of options.
We circle back all the
Thank you,
So
Mr.
motion to
Lipsick.
approve this
Okay.
policy as written?
Okay.
With the
We have a
amendment?
motion to approve the policy
Yes.
with
Oh my
the
God.
oral clarification from Dr. Baldessari.
That's amended.
And,
On the motion?
and yes, on that motion, Ms. Cormier.
Thank you. So, reviewing this, first, I'm looking at what a face covering is defined as, and I'm not seeing anything about the quality of the material. So, if it covers the nose and mouth, it could be made out of lace, for all, how do we avoid these masks that are not actually doing what the mask is supposed to do? If anybody has any thoughts on that.
In the former policy, the language was very similar to the current policy. And at the school, when the mask did not meet the threshold that was determined by the nurse, the student would be given one of the masks that we did at school.
Okay, so this will be handled on at
It's-
school level?
Yeah, it's handled.
Okay.
And we never, at no point do I recall having any of that ever becoming something that made its way up to
Yeah.
55.
Regarding the removal, mask breaks, eating and drinking, physical education classes, I'm curious I know DESE added that, or MASC added that, and I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not sure why, unless we're assuming that they're outside, in which case that would be a redundant statement.
Well, I don't think that I specified
I think,
physical education
I think
in
it's
this
the social
policy.
distancing part up there.
Just give me 1 second.
So they're talking about if the physical education, they have enough appropriate distancing. I think
Okay.
that's what, so if there's not ability to have social distancing,
Oh, yes.
In the gym, then
Right.
they will be masked.
Yeah,
Right.
so
Yep.
it says face coverings will not be required when appropriate social distancing is enforced, and
And-
then it says physical.
Just a comment on the mask with slits through them. Is the trumpet not going to have COVID coming out of it when I don't know. There's things they can do.
Like when you sit down, it doesn't come.
Let me see, what was my other question? Oh, just a note that on the second page, it mentions the student's family, it should say parent or guardian, because the guardian is not always the family.
Paragraph.
A student's mask or face covering is to be provided.
The first full paragraph on the second
Oh, by the
page.
students, yeah.
So technically, this is really you're making amendments.
I'm-
So
I'm
we'll
ask-
treat it as an amendment. And we'll-
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's...
If you have little things.
No,
I think-
picky, I always have little things.
Yeah, but I don't think it's going to impact.
No, I just wanted to make sure that that was covered, because I
Yeah.
didn't want that. It
That one's
seemed
important.
exclusionary.
Language change to parent guardian.
yeah, that one's important.
Yeah, definitely.
And,
But if you have any further, like,
oh, he knows.
things you
On or
can-
before October 29th.
Yeah.
And
That is
also
protocol.
the amendment to the handbook, is that right? Was that this, or was that the other thing? In what you gave us from Mike Long,
Yes.
it said that we would need to amend the handbook. I know the handbooks
Well,
already went into print.
Yeah, so on that, the issue there is that, we haven't had anything happen where non-masking resulted in, a student not attending school. The concern that Attorney Long has certainly is that if a student is not allowed to attend school because of refusal to wear a mask, that Chapter 71, Section 37H and 3/4 would become a factor, meaning that we would need to provide for educational support for that student in some other way. And so we would address that on an individual basis through a council, if that should come up.
All right.
I just think having this public meeting on the policy is in fact amending the high school handbook because we're adopting a policy. So this could become a leaflet inside the high school.
Yeah, I believe
Chapter
that
70.
once approved,
74.
a message would go out to the community.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Mr. Mulrennan.
If I may, Madam Chair, to Dr. B for clarification, so when you're reading my on or before the 29th,
Yes.
we're not going to go with the first. October 5th, you guys find out that the vaccination rate is now 83%.
Yep.
Do we make a change, or we hang out until 3 weeks?
We would be complying with the policy
Yep.
by convening on October 5th, which is before the 29th.
Right.
So we would be, the one thing is we just need to make sure that before October 29th that we convene to address this portion.
So the administration could put it before the board anytime they
Yeah.
think
Yes.
something's changed, either more draconian or less draconian.
On or before.
On or before.
Yeah.
So it kind of opens that
Meet
window
tomorrow.
that,
Yep.
So
although we had
September.
voted earlier tonight that we weren't going to keep the 31, and we were going to
Yes.
keep the 1, and now we're back to 31 again,
Except the language has changed.
Language has changed.
on or before 31.
we will reconvene.
29,
But
whatever
the
you
school
want to
committee
call
will reconvene. That's
Maybe
what's
even
also
September
changed.
We have 2 meetings in
See you guys all
October.
tomorrow.
We could always put it on agenda in October if we meet that threshold.
All right, so let's get on with some business.
Moving on. All right.
I have a motion to approve this policy with Ms. Cormier's excellent recommendations for amendments. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. 7-0. All right. Excellent work. That was wonderful, wonderful work.
Hardest working subcommittee?
All right.
Oh, I don't know about that.
So as everybody knows, we got a correspondence from Jeremy Johnson. And I want to commend the public speaker, Allison Van Devender. She sent an email to the school committee. I don't know if I forwarded it to you. I apologize for that. It was about ventilation, and
Yeah, we got that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So thank you. It was very articulate, as her presentation was tonight. And I don't think, if we got more correspondence, I apologize. I don't have my phone with me, so if I missed any, I apologize, and I'll announce them next meeting. Future agenda items.
Item D.
What about Dr. Wells?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I did that to you last meeting, too. All right. Dr. Wells was so kind to touch base with the mayor regarding the city's capital plan, and can you report out from that to the committee,
Yeah,
please?
so the superintendent, myself, and Mr. Dunkley met with the mayor. I brought to him, the concern of the school committee that we didn't want the progress that has been made in repairing buildings and building new buildings to be lost, with what's happening in COVID. So we talked to the mayor for about an hour. He's very receptive to our conversation. He indicated that, right now, the city's not in the financial shape to do this, but obviously, the school, as he pointed out, the school committee is not ready to make a decision about what to do. So we came to the conclusion that we are funding a feasibility study this coming year, and that after the feasibility study is given back to the school committee, and that feasibility study will look at all the buildings, including the old Wyman building, that the school committee will then look at what's presented and make some determinations where they want to go. And we can all foresee there might be multiple choices we have to make, because we may not be able to do everything we want at once. We're going to look at what's the status of the old Wyman. Does that fit into the plans? We'll be looking at numbers and so forth. So I think the data is gathering this year. Next year is a real analysis by the school committee and discussions about where they want to go. And then the following year, we present it to the mayor. Here's where we think is best. And then we work with the mayor and the city council to move forward. And, we're anticipating, 2028, I think, when we have to go through all the things that Mike's talked about over the years, trying to get the funding from the state and so forth. That's probably a realistic time frame for when action would be taken.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Wells. That was very thorough. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I will also mention that Dr. Crowley and I, feels like months ago, attended the city council meeting when the mayor presented his capital plan, and it was very well received, as always. There was also, just for the committee's information, a lot of talk about accessible playgrounds, which I know is something that the committee is also very much in favor for. And the mayor mentioned that he is appropriating $35,000 towards inclusive city planning, and including accessible playgrounds. And that was very warmly receptive by the city council, and I appreciated that. It was nice to see. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Wells. And again, I mentioned the correspondence.
And the correspondence, Madam Chairman.
Oh, of course, yes.
So this evening, we had a woman who was obviously upset with one of our vendors, NRT.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it'd be appropriate that the special ed subcommittee maybe review the situation with the vendor, get some more information, and then potentially bring it to the full committee to have a discussion on, is this vendor meeting our requirements? And if not, what action do we need to take to do that? She mentioned parents have been concerned about it. Maybe I didn't see all the cars, but this is, I think, the first time I've seen a correspondence about this situation. So, find out if there's more parents, get some more information about that. I think that's all can be done through the special ed subcommittee, and then we'll have to look to see whether the full committee needs to take action.
Thank you, Dr.
Student
So
Services
I'll
and
refer that to SSA, and maybe work with CPAC to see what's other parent feedback as well as Mrs. Keating's, because I appreciate Mrs. Keating's pointed comments on the topic. Okay, any other correspondence? Can't think of any. Okay, great. All right, so I had, Dr. Wells mentioned a concern regarding the mayor's policy, and so we're going to go into executive session for the purposes of discussing our position in terms of collective bargaining regarding the proposed mandatory vaccination testing policy. And I don't anticipate a long executive session, but I will announce any votes that are taken in executive session. So we need the public to leave, unfortunately. Are we back on?
Hold on.
Oh,
She says yes, and
she's on YouTube.
says live, and
Reset?
All right, so the school committee had an opportunity to discuss the legal ramifications in executive session regarding proposed mandatory vaccination testing policy. Do I have a motion to approve this?
motion to approve.
Any discussion on that motion?
Second. Sorry. Yes?
Madam
All
Chair,
in favor?
just note
Aye.
that the administration indicated there were no ramifications with the unions.
Yes,
That we had no-
we discussed this, and apparently Mr. Galvin had discussed this with the union ahead of time.
And it's
so
been
we-
reviewed by legal counsel. and
Reviewed
they-
by legal counsel, and
Yeah.
so we are satisfied that it is ready for me to sign upon your vote. So I will be signing this right now.
Motion to adjourn.
You got to vote.
I just did.
Oh, good.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll
We're
vote
gonna vote
again.
to adjourn.
All in favor?
Motion to adjourn.
Yay.
Let's take away from me.